The night was cold and the land was silent. Only the broken walls of a destroyed village stood under the pale light of the moon. Smoke still rose from blackened wood. The air smelled of dust, fire, and sadness. Among the ruins, a lonely figure moved quietly. It was an alien woman, her body thin, her face pale, her clothes torn. She walked slowly over stones and ashes. Every step made a small sound that echoed in the empty streets. Her eyes, once bright, now looked heavy and tired. She had lost everything, her home, her people, her pride. Now she was just a shadow moving in a world that no longer wanted her. She tried to find food, but there was nothing left. She touched a burnt pot only to find ashes inside. She pulled a broken cloth tighter around her shoulders, but it could not hide her shivering. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Hunger had become part of her life. The wind blew through the ruins, lifting dust into the air. The woman sat on the ground near a half-destroyed wall. She hugged her knees and pressed her face against them. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she made no sound. She had learned long ago that crying for help brought no answer. Her mind replayed the moment she lost everything. She remembered the screams, the fire, the soldiers who came without mercy. She remembered her people running, hiding, falling. She remembered being pushed away, called weak, called useless. Even her own kind had abandoned her. Now alone, she felt like nothing. The silence around her was heavy, almost crushing. She whispered to herself, "Why am I still alive?" Her voice was soft, broken, carried away by the night wind. But she was not completely alone. Somewhere in the distance, faint footsteps moved closer. She lifted her head, her heart beating faster. Fear filled her chest. Was it an enemy? Was it another thief who would take whatever little she had left? She pressed her back against the broken wall, trying to hide in the shadows. The footsteps grew louder. Her breathing became quick. She looked for a weapon, but there was nothing. Only a piece of wood too weak to fight with. She held it anyway, her hands trembling. Through the smoke and dust, a tall figure appeared. A man, not one of her kind. His steps were steady, his body covered in armor that reflected the moonlight. His face was half hidden, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the ruins. A human. The woman's fear grew stronger. She had heard stories of humans, how they were strong, how they could be kind, but also how they could be dangerous. She did not know which one stood before her now. The man stopped a few steps away, his eyes locking on her. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of the wind. Her grip tightened on the weak piece of wood. She tried to look strong, but inside she was shaking. The human's shadow fell across her, and she felt smaller than ever. He took one step closer. She flinched. His hand moved slowly, reaching into his bag. She almost screamed, almost ran, but her legs were too weak. Then, to her surprise, he pulled out something simple. Food, a small pack wrapped in cloth. He placed it gently on the ground between them and then stepped back. His eyes did not leave hers, but there was no threat in them. Only a strange calm. The woman stared at the food. Her body screamed for it, but her mind screamed trap. She shook her head, pressing herself tighter against the wall. The human did not push. He just stood there, waiting. Minutes passed. The woman's hunger grew unbearable. Her eyes returned again and again to the pack on the ground. Finally, with slow, shaking hands, she reached forward. She picked it up and opened it. Inside was bread, simple but real. Her throat tightened. For a moment, she could not breathe. She took a small bite, then another. The taste filled her mouth with life she thought she had lost. Tears fell again, but this time they were different. She looked up at the human. He had not moved. He was still watching her, silent, steady. She did not understand why he helped. She did not even know his name. The night grew colder, the wind stronger. The ruins around them stood like ghosts of the past. The woman sat there, clutching the bread, her heart filled with confusion. For the first time in many nights, she felt a spark of warmth, not from the bread, not from the ruined walls, but from the silent presence of the human who had chosen not to leave her to die. And deep inside, though she did not admit it yet, she wondered, could this be the beginning of something new? The ruins were silent except for the crackle of wind pushing dust through broken stone. The alien woman sat with the bread still in her hands, unsure if she should eat more or throw it away. Her stomach wanted to eat. Her mind wanted to run. She did not trust kindness anymore, because kindness had always been followed by betrayal, yet the human did not move closer. He stood a few steps away like a statue under the silver moon. His armor looked heavy, scratched by battles, but his eyes remained calm. They were the kind of eyes that had seen too much yet carried a strange patience. The woman lowered her gaze, taking another small bite of the bread. It was dry, but it tasted like hope. Still, questions filled her head. Why would a human care for me? Why would he stop here in these broken streets for someone like me? When she looked up again, the man was crouched low, checking the ground. His hands brushed away some ashes, and he frowned. It was as if he was searching for something. The woman pulled her torn cloth tighter around her body, her heart racing. Was he looking for survivors? Was he a soldier scouting for enemies? Then his eyes shifted back to her. The silence between them was heavy. Finally he spoke, his voice low and rough. You shouldn't be here. The alien woman froze. His words carried no anger, but they felt like a warning. She opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. For so long she had been silent, hiding in shadows, that her voice almost felt broken. The man tilted his head, waiting, but she said nothing. Instead, she hugged her knees tighter, as if the small ball of her body could protect her from his presence. He sighed, then looked around the ruins again. This place is dangerous. Raiders pass here at night. She flinched at the word raiders. Her people had been destroyed by them. Her heart beat faster. Her hands shook. She pressed the bread close to her chest as if someone would steal it away. The man noticed her fear. Slowly he stood straight and placed both hands out in front of him, palms open, a gesture of peace. His voice softened. I am not here to hurt you. The alien woman's eyes narrowed. She wanted to believe him, but belief had cost her everything once before. He reached for his belt, pulling out a small metal canister. He twisted the cap and placed it on the ground, rolling it toward her. Water. The liquid inside shimmered as the moonlight touched it. Her throat burned. She had not tasted clean water for days. Still, she hesitated. The human did not push her. He simply sat down on a stone nearby, lowering himself to her level. His actions carried a strange patience, almost as if he knew rushing her would break the fragile trust that had just started to form. Minutes passed. The woman slowly reached forward and picked up the canister. She brought it to her lips and drank. The water slid down her throat, cool and refreshing. For a moment she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears blurred her vision. She whispered, her voice thin and cracked. Why? Why are you helping me? The human did not answer immediately. His eyes drifted toward the sky, where clouds covered the stars. His jaw tightened as if he was carrying a weight she could not see. Finally he spoke, because no one should be left with nothing. The word struck her heart like an arrow. She had been left with nothing. Everyone had turned away. Yet here was a stranger, a human, saying she still deserved something. She stared at him, trying to read his face. There was no pity there, only a steady strength. His presence made her feel small but not unwanted. A sound broke the silence. Distant, faint but clear. The clatter of metal, the laugh of rough voices. The woman's body went rigid. Her ears twitched. She knew that sound. Raiders. The human heard it too. He stood quickly, scanning the ruins. His hand moved to the weapon on his back. He looked down at her, his voice firm but calm. Stay behind me. She wanted to run, to hide, but her body froze. Her instincts told her to trust no one. But something in his voice, steady, certain, pulled her closer. She rose to her feet, trembling, and stood near him. The voices grew louder, closer. Shadows moved between the broken walls. The human's eyes narrowed, his hand gripping his weapon tightly. The alien woman pressed her hands against her chest, whispering silently, Please, not again. The man glanced at her once, then nodded. I won't let them touch you. And for the first time since her world had burned, she felt something new. Not hope, not trust, but the first spark of safety. The human stranger stood tall, ready to face whatever came out of the darkness. And she, the woman who had been left with nothing, took her first step closer to him, not knowing that this night would change everything. The night stretched darker as the voices of raiders echoed faintly through the ruins. The alien woman stood frozen, her thin frame trembling in fear. The human soldier remained steady beside her, weapon in hand, his body tall and unmoving like a wall of iron. For a long moment, nothing happened. Only the distant sounds of rough laughter and boots crunching over stones carried through the cold air. Then slowly the voices faded away. The raiders had taken another path, leaving the broken village untouched for now. The woman exhaled a shaky breath, pressing her hands against her chest. Her heart was still pounding fast, as if it wanted to break free. The human soldier lowered his weapon, scanning the shadows one last time. When he was sure the danger had passed, he turned to look at her. Her eyes met his for a second, then quickly darted away. Shame filled her. Shame of her torn clothes, her weakness, her helplessness. She hated how small she felt under his steady gaze. The soldier did not speak. Instead, he knelt down and pulled another small bundle from his bag. This time it was not food or water. It was a rough piece of cloth large enough to cover her shoulders. Without a word, he held it out. The woman's lips parted, but no sound came. Her throat felt tight. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to say she didn't need it. But her body betrayed her. She was shivering, her skin cold from the wind. He gave a small nod, silent but firm, as if telling her, "Take it. You deserve at least this much." Her fingers hesitated, then slowly reached forward. She touched the cloth. It was warm from his hands. Carefully, she pulled it around herself. For the first time in days, she felt the weight of something that wasn't broken or torn. Her chest ached. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and glassy. She whispered softly, almost afraid of her own voice. "Why?" The soldier's face remained calm, though his eyes softened. He did not answer with words. Instead, he made a small gesture, placing a hand against his chest, then lowering it toward the ground. It was a gesture of peace, of grounding, something simple yet powerful. A silent gesture. The woman's breath caught. In her people's culture, long forgotten by most, that same gesture had once meant, "You are safe with me." How did he know? Perhaps he didn't. Perhaps it was just instinct. But the meaning still struck her heart like fire in the cold. She turned away quickly, hiding her tears in the shadows of the ruins. She didn't want him to see her break. But he had already seen enough. The human did not press her. He simply sat down on a fallen stone, his back against the wall. His weapon rested across his knees, but his posture was relaxed. He was not a man chasing war in this moment. He was only a man keeping watch. The woman sat a short distance away, hugging the cloth closer around her body. The bread was still in her lap, half-eaten. She looked at it, then at him. Slowly, she tore off a small piece and held it out in her hand. Her hand shook. She had never offered food before, not since her people turned her away. But something inside told her to try. The soldier glanced at the piece of bread. For a moment, he did not move. Then quietly, he leaned forward and took it. He ate it without a word. It was a small act. But to her, it was everything. Her chest tightened again, this time with something unfamiliar. She didn't know what to call it. Not trust. Trust was too big, too heavy. Not friendship. Friendship was too far away. But something gentle, something fragile had begun to grow. The ruins around them remained silent. The fire-blackened walls stood tall like dead guardians. The wind whispered through cracks in broken windows. Yet for the first time in so long, the silence didn't feel empty. The alien woman watched the human soldier in secret. She noticed the way he kept scanning the shadows, as if protecting her even while resting. She noticed the tiredness in his eyes, the scars along his armor, the quiet way he carried himself. She wondered what his story was. Why he was here, why he cared, but she did not ask. Not yet. She was too afraid to know the answer. Instead, she pulled the cloth tighter, leaning her head against the cold wall. The night was still dangerous, and fear still lived inside her. But with the bread in her lap, the cloth around her shoulders, and the silent man sitting nearby, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Not safety. Not hope. Just a little less alone. And sometimes that was enough to keep breathing. The night deepened and the cold grew sharper. Clouds gathered above the ruins, covering the pale moon. The alien woman pulled the rough cloth tighter around her shoulders, but her body still shivered. The human soldier sat nearby, silent, his weapon across his knees. For a while, they listened only to the whisper of the wind moving through the broken stones. Then the first drop of rain fell. It landed on her cheek, sliding down like a tear. Another drop followed, and then another. Within minutes, the sky broke open. Rain poured down heavily, striking the ruins with harsh rhythm. Thunder rumbled far away, deep and angry. The woman gasped as the water soaked her torn clothes. The cloth around her shoulders became heavy and wet. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stay warm, but her thin body trembled harder. The human soldier stood quickly. He looked around, scanning the ruins, then pointed toward a half-standing building with part of its roof still intact. "Come," he said firmly. She hesitated. Fear tugged at her. Following anyone had always meant danger before, but lightning lit the sky in a bright flash, and she had no choice. She rose on weak legs and moved after him, stumbling over the wet ground. They reached the building and stepped inside. The roof leaked, but it gave more protection than the open street. The soldier set down his bag, pulling out another cloth and shaking it dry as much as he could. He handed it to her without words. She accepted it, pressing it against her arms. But her body was still shaking. Her teeth clicked together and her lips turned pale. The storm was too cold, too heavy. The human watched her for a moment, then did something she did not expect. He removed his thick jacket, worn and scratched from battles, and placed it over her shoulders. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "No," she whispered weakly. She tried to push it back, but he held it firm. "You'll freeze," he said simply. Her breath caught in her throat. The warmth of his jacket spread through her, carrying the smell of leather, earth, and smoke. It was too much. She felt her chest ache as if the kindness itself was breaking her. The thunder roared again, shaking the broken walls. She flinched, crouching lower, her arms clutching the jacket close. Memories rushed back. The fire, the screams, the night her people fell. Her body trembled harder, not only from cold but from fear. The soldier noticed. He crouched beside her, his expression steady. For a moment he did nothing, only watching her with calm eyes. Then slowly, he reached out and wrapped his arms around her. She froze. Her mind screamed to run, to fight, to push him away. But her body felt the warmth of his arms, strong and steady like a shield against the storm. She pressed her face into his chest, her tears mixing with the rain on his armor. The soldier said nothing. He did not promise safety. He did not speak comfort. He simply held her as the storm raged outside, his presence solid, unshaken. The alien woman closed her eyes. For so long she had been empty, without family, without love, without touch. Now wrapped in the arms of a stranger, she felt something she could not name. Her heart beat faster, not from fear but from the strange comfort of being seen, being held. The storm roared louder, rain pounding against the roof. The air was filled with the sound of nature's anger. But inside the ruined shelter, a small island of peace formed. She whispered through shaking lips, "Why? Do you care?" The human did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened, his eyes staring into the darkness outside. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet but firm, because no one should face the storm alone. Her tears flowed freely now. She pressed herself closer, afraid that if she let go, the storm would swallow her. Time passed slowly. The thunder rolled again and again, but the soldier's arms never loosened. His warmth never faded. He was not just a human soldier anymore. In that moment, to her, he was the wall that kept the world away. When the storm finally began to ease, her body grew heavy with exhaustion. She drifted against his chest, her breathing softening. Sleep pulled at her, but for the first time in years, she was not afraid of it. The last thing she heard before her eyes closed was the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, strong and calm like a promise unspoken. And in that night of storm and ruin, something fragile but powerful was born, something that would change them both. The storm raged outside, thunder shaking the ruins with each strike. Inside the broken shelter, the alien woman sat curled against the human soldier's chest. His arms remained around her, firm and steady. The sound of rain on stone filled the silence, but in that silence, she felt something she had not known in years. Warmth. Her breathing was uneven at first, shallow and frightened. Every roll of thunder made her flinch, but the soldier's steady heartbeat under her ear calmed her little by little. She realized something strange. She was no longer afraid of the storm. She was afraid of what would happen when his arms let go. She pressed closer without meaning to, clutching his jacket tighter. The fabric smelled of smoke and metal, but it was his warmth that mattered. She had never been held like this, not even by her own kind. Her people had called her weak. They had left her behind. But this human stranger with scars on his armor and tired eyes held her as if she was worth protecting. The soldier did not speak. Words were not needed. His strength was silent, his comfort simple. The way he wrapped her in his arms said more than any promise could. After a long time, she whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't understand. Why do this for me?" He looked down at her, his face calm but thoughtful. His voice was low, almost lost under the storm. "Because you deserve more than the world gave you." Her eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She wanted to argue, to say she was nothing, to say she had lost everything. But the words caught in her throat. His arms around her felt too real, too certain. She shook her head slowly. I am broken. Useless. The soldier's grip tightened just slightly, enough for her to feel it. You are still alive. That is not useless. Her tears came again. But they were silent this time. She let them fall against his chest. His arms did not move away. Lightning flashed, illuminating the ruins for a moment. In that flash, she caught sight of his face more clearly. The scars along his jaw, the tired lines near his eyes, the firm set of his mouth. This was not a man untouched by pain. He had his own battles written across his skin. Perhaps that was why he understood hers. The storm began to soften, the thunder fading into the distance. But still, he did not release her. She wondered if he would ever let go, or if she wanted him to. For the first time since her world fell apart, she did not want to be alone. She whispered again, almost afraid to hear her own voice. What? What is your name? He was quiet for a moment. Then simply he said it. A name short and human, carrying weight she could not yet understand. She repeated it softly as if testing the sound, tasting it on her lips. It felt strange, but it warmed her chest. For so long she had spoken only to herself. Speaking to someone else, saying their name, felt like touching life again. The soldier looked at her with steady eyes. And yours? He asked. Her throat tightened. For a second she did not want to answer. Her name was all she had left, and even that had been forgotten by those who abandoned her. But now with him, maybe it could mean something again. She whispered it, fragile and quiet. He nodded once, repeating it back to her with respect, as if carving it into the air so it could not be erased. Her heart ached. It was the first time in years that her name had not been spoken with cruelty. The storm faded further, the rain turning into a soft drizzle. The ruins outside looked calmer now, washed clean by the water. But inside, something much greater had changed. She leaned back slightly, looking at him with wide, uncertain eyes. Her voice trembled. When you held me, I didn't feel empty anymore. The soldier's gaze held hers, steady and unshaken. Then I will keep holding you until you never feel empty again. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she lowered her head, letting herself rest against him once more. Her body relaxed for the first time in years, not because the storm had ended, but because she had found shelter stronger than any roof or wall. Wrapped in his arms, the alien woman felt the fragile beginnings of something new. Not trust, not yet. Not love, not yet. But a bond that could grow into both. The night was long, and the road ahead was still unknown. But in that ruined shelter, beneath the fading storm, she finally believed she might survive, because someone had chosen to see her as more than nothing. And in the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, she found the first promise of a future. The storm had passed, leaving only the soft drip of water through cracks in the ruined roof. The alien woman sat wrapped in the human's jacket, her body pressed close to his for warmth. His arms no longer held her tightly, but they still rested around her shoulders, steady, protective. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to breathe. The fear that had lived inside her chest like fire had dimmed into quiet embers. Yet with safety came something more dangerous. Memory. She shifted slightly, her eyes fixed on the ground. The silence pressed against her. She knew he would not ask, but she also knew she could not stay silent forever. A bond had begun between them, fragile but real, and bonds were built on truth. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Do you want to know why I was left here?" The soldier turned his head slowly, his calm gaze meeting hers. He did not push, only nodded once. His patience gave her the courage to continue. She closed her eyes, letting the words rise like wounds torn open. My people called me cursed. From birth they said I brought weakness. I was not strong enough, not fast enough. They said I slowed them down. Her hands trembled as she clutched the jacket tighter. When the raiders came, fire and blood filled our village. Everyone ran. I tried to run too, but I fell. I begged for help. I begged my own kin to take me with them. Her voice broke. But they turned their backs, they said. It was better if I stayed behind. One less mouth to feed. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her breath sharp and painful. Tears blurred her vision. I hid while they burned. I heard screams, I smelled the smoke. And when it was over, no one returned for me. I was left with nothing. Her words hung heavy in the air, filling the ruined shelter with sorrow. The human soldier did not speak right away. He studied her, his eyes carrying no pity, only a deep weight of understanding. His own scars had told him stories not so different from hers. Finally, he said quietly, "You are not nothing." She shook her head hard, tears falling fast. "I am broken. Even my people said so." His voice grew firmer, steady like stone. "Your people were wrong." The woman gasped softly as if the words were impossible. She had lived so long believing the voices that abandoned her. Hearing the opposite made her chest ache in a way she could not control. She looked up at him, searching his face. There was no hesitation, no mockery. His words were simple truth. Her hands rose without thought, pressing against her chest. Her voice was a whisper. "Why do you say that? You don't even know me." The soldier's jaw tightened, his eyes shadowed by his own memories. "Because I know what it feels like to be left behind. And I know. No one survives alone." The woman's breath caught. His voice carried weight, as if he too had once been abandoned in the dark. She wanted to ask, but his silence told her he was not ready to share, just as she had not been ready until now. Still, his words wrapped around her heart like his arms had during the storm. Slowly, she leaned closer, resting her head against his shoulder. "When you held me, I felt whole for the first time," she whispered. He turned his head slightly, looking down at her. His hand moved slow and gentle to rest against her back. It was not just protection now. It was reassurance, a quiet promise that she was no longer alone. The ruins outside were still broken, but inside something new had been built. A fragile bridge between two souls scarred by loss. The woman closed her eyes, whispering words she never thought she would speak again. "Thank you for not turning away." The human did not answer with words. Instead, he tightened his arm around her just enough to let her know she had been heard. The night stretched long, but it was no longer empty. The sound of dripping water filled the silence, calm and steady, like the rhythm of their shared breathing. And though the world outside remained cruel, within the broken shelter, the alien woman began to believe that perhaps she was not cursed. Perhaps she was not useless. Perhaps she had been left with nothing, so she could find the one person who would see her as everything. Morning came slowly. The storm had ended, leaving the ruins washed clean. Puddles glimmered in the sunlight, broken stones shining with drops of water. The alien woman opened her eyes and blinked against the light. She was still wrapped in the human's jacket, her body leaning against him. For the first time in years, she had slept without fear. The soldier stirred, his hand moving to his weapon out of habit before he relaxed. He looked at her quietly, as if making sure she was real and not a ghost of the night. She sat up slowly, brushing damp hair from her face. The air smelled fresh after the storm, and for a moment the ruins didn't feel so heavy. She glanced at him, her heart trembling with words she did not know how to say. They stepped outside together. The village was still broken, but sunlight poured over the cracked walls. Birds had returned, their small voices filling the silence that once belonged to death. The woman clutched the jacket tighter around her shoulders. She had thought she would never feel warmth again, but now warmth walked beside her in the form of a stranger who had chosen not to leave. She whispered softly, almost to herself. "It feels different today." The soldier glanced at her, his voice steady. "It's because you're not alone anymore." Her chest ached at the words. She stopped walking and turned to him, her eyes shining. "Do you mean that? You won't leave me?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "As long as I live, you will never be nothing again." Her breath caught, her lips trembling. She lowered her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. For so long she had believed she was worthless, but now, in his words, she found something she thought impossible. A future. She took a small step forward, almost afraid, and then another. She stood close to him, close enough to hear his steady breath. Her voice was fragile yet firm. "Then, let me walk with you." The soldier gave a single nod. We walked together. They began moving through the ruins, stepping over stones and puddles. The woman felt her steps grow stronger as if his presence carried her forward. The broken streets that once chained her in despair now opened like a path leading somewhere new. As they left the village behind, the woman turned back one last time. The ruins stood quiet, the graves of her old life. She whispered under her breath, "Goodbye." Then she faced forward toward the horizon. The soldier noticed the way her shoulders lifted, the way her face carried both pain and determination. He did not speak, but pride flickered in his eyes. Hours passed as they walked together. The world ahead was still dangerous. There would be raiders, hunger, and battles to come. but neither of them spoke of fear. They carried silence like a bond, stronger than words. When they stopped to rest, the woman sat near him, her head tilted slightly toward his shoulder. The warmth of his jacket still wrapped her, but it was his presence that gave her strength. She whispered softly, "Yesterday, I had nothing. Today, I have someone." The soldier turned his head toward her, his voice calm. "And tomorrow you will have more." Her lips curved into the smallest smile, fragile but real. For the first time since her people abandoned her, she believed in tomorrow. The sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon with gold. The two figures walked on, one human, one alien, both scarred, both broken. Yet together, the world had taken everything from her. But it had also given her this: a hand to hold in the storm, arms to protect her in the cold, and a promise that she was not nothing. And as the road stretched forward, the alien woman understood that her story was no longer one of ruins. It was a story of survival, a story of being seen, a story of a new beginning.